Howdy readers, I'm Jason and this is Chapter and Verse, and this is a new look. It's not going to be the normal look. I'm still going to be filming most of my videos over in my recliner in the corner of the library. But tonight I'm going to be doing the classic and contemporary pairs book tag, and I needed some room for the stacks of books around me. So this tag was created by Jennifer at Insert Literary Pun Here. If you haven't checked out her channel yet, here is why you should, okay? She is clearly doing what she was born to do in reading and reviewing books. I have yet to find a book reviewer on BookTube or in print anywhere whose reviews I feel like are more intelligent and more sophisticated. When I hear her review a book, even if it's a book that I haven't read yet, I feel like I walk away from the review a better reader, a more keen reader, if that makes sense. I was tagged by bigalbooks about a week ago. She and I recently had a great discussion over on her channel about Thomas Hardy and the films of Michael Winterbottom. Winterbottom has made 3 adaptations of Hardy novels. Thank you for the tag, bigalbooks, and I'm going to jump right in. So, the first one I'm going to do. So I have not read all of these, okay? The classics or the contemporaries. I've read some, I haven't read others, but I know a lot about many of these titles just from my days as a bookseller. So this first pair, I have not read either the classic or the contemporary. But the classic is Moby Dick. I have the Norton Critical Edition here. As I've said, I think in another video, I've read the first half of Moby Dick twice. We all know Moby Dick, right? It's about Captain Ahab leading this crew on this ship in search of this great white whale who took his leg. He's obsessed. It's very much so not about justice, but about vengeance. And yeah, that's Moby Dick in a nutshell. So the book that I'm going to pair it with is a science fiction novel that I have not read, but we actually have a signed copy of it. Ta-da! And this is Nova by Samuel Delany. Okay, Samuel Delany is best known for a giant novel called Dahlgren. I've only read some of his short fiction, but anyway, this is Nova, and was described by one critic when it was published as kind of Moby Dick in space. So I will quickly read the back of the book to you. Hopefully, I don't get the names of the characters too wrong. Given that the suns of Draco stretch almost 16 light years from end to end, it stands to reason that the cost of transportation is the most important factor of the 32nd century. And since Illyrion is the element most needed for space travel, Lork von Ray is plenty willing to fly through the core of a recently imploded sun in order to obtain 7 tons of it. The potential for profit is so great that Lork has little difficulty cobbling together an alluring crew that includes a gypsy musician and a moon-obsessed scholar interested in the ancient art of writing a novel. What the crew doesn't know, though, is that Lork's quest is actually fueled by a private revenge so consuming that he'll stop at nothing to achieve it. So that's Nova. Samuel Delany, kind of a sci-fi Moby Dick. All right, the next pair. I have read both of these books. I've read both of these books multiple times. And this, the classic, is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. This is the story of Pip, young Pip, who falls in love with young Estella, who's the charge of one crazy, batshit crazy Miss Havisham. She of the rotten wedding cake and decomposing wedding dress. Early in the novel, Pip runs into a convict named Magwitch. There on the kind of coast of England, he is being transported to Australia. And that kind of sets the whole plot in motion. Anyway, Great Expectations. The contemporary novel I'm going to pair it with is Jack Maggs by Peter Carey, which is also a signed edition that we actually got in a used bookstore. I can't remember if it was here in Wyoming or in Montana. But anyway, Jack Maggs by Peter Carey. So the Jack Maggs of the title is Dickens's Magwitch. Okay, he's renamed Jack Maggs in Carey's novel. And this is really this is really the story from the Magwitch perspective, right? And not even really Dickens' story, right? Dickens' novel kind of serves as a jumping off point more than anything else for Carey. This is not a strict retelling. This is a book that's very much about hypnosis, about mesmerism in the 19th century, the fascination that the public had with it. And yeah, it's about a man kind of reckoning with his mistakes and with his future. It's a brilliant book. I would say it's one of Carey's middle to kind of upper deck novels. I've read almost all of his books. He's my favorite living novelist. Anyway, it's good stuff. Kind of an Australian spin on Great Expectations. The next one, the classic, I have not read, and the contemporary I have not read. But this is Giovanni Boccaccio's Decameron. And what I know of the Decameron is pretty basic, right? So you got a handful of young people who are whiling away the time with the Black Death in the distance by telling stories. Storytelling as survival, you might say. It's a long tradition of this, right? This is essentially what the Canterbury Tales is, right? They're not trying to survive, but they're on the road in the Canterbury Tales. They're on saddles. They're dealing with discomfort and back pain and hemorrhoids. Who knows? So what am I going to pair it with, you might ask? Well, so this is Jane Smiley's 10 Days in the Hills. Okay, this is her version of the Decameron, and it is about Hollywood. It's about the movie industry. It's about excess. I haven't read it, like I said, but I know quite a lot about it. Jane Smiley's long been a favorite writer of mine. We're going to see her again later in this video. But as a big film buff myself, and as a huge Smiley fan, she actually, was it last year, I think, she spoke at what was known as MFOB, Montana Festival of the Book once upon a time, in Missoula. And of course, we don't live in Missoula anymore. If she had spoken while we still live there, that would have been very exciting to have gotten to kind of meet and hobnob with Jane Smiley. But anyway, this is her take on the Decameron. Next, we have a classic that strangely I have not read, but we didn't read it in my high school, so yeah, I had no reason to ever pick it up. I'm curious to read it, but anyway, it's Lord of the Flies. This is a book that I would say 98% of you watching this have read. Again, I haven't, but we all know the story. I think I've seen the film of it. Bunch of young boys stranded on an island. Chaos and cruelty ensue. So that's Lord of the Flies, William Golding. And the book I'm pairing it with is, and I have read this, this is Marianne Wiggins' John Dollar. Okay, and this is essentially Lord of the Flies, but with girls. And it's dark and it's scary, and yeah, I mean, reading it as a man, I'm just like, okay, that's fucked up. Anyway, Marianne Wiggins, she was another writer who was at Montana Festival of the Book once upon a time, and I did get to meet her. Took my students to see her, and that was the same panel that Andrew Sean Greer, which I mentioned before, was on. Andrew Sean Greer was by far the most gracious and courteous writer on that panel. Marianne Wiggins was fine. She was rather flighty. I could go into that more at a later date, but anyway, it's a slim book. It's yeah, it's creepy, it's exotic. I won't say it's fun, but it's quite good. So, Lord of the Flies with Girls, John Dollar. And then lastly, we are going to talk about King Lear. Okay, and I've read King Lear multiple times. It's one of Shakespeare's really, truly great plays. This probably, Hamlet and King Lear are probably his greatest plays. I'm partial to The Tempest, as you guys know. But King Lear is the story of an aging king who is looking to essentially divide his kingdom up between his three daughters, two of whom have really no conscience, and one of whom has enough conscience for everybody in the play, we'll say. It is tragic. It is just heart-wrenching. And it's dark as hell. I mean, it's Titus Andronicus dark, and that's dark if you've read Titus. So that's King Lear. And the book I'm going to pair that with is another Jane Smiley that I've read multiple times, and this is 1,000 Acres. And this is a pretty strict retelling, actually, of King Lear. It's set in the late 1970s on a farm in Iowa. And I used to, for many years, consider this a favorite book. It was a kind of no-brainer 5-star book for me on Goodreads. And then I read an interview or a Q&A with Jane Smiley some years ago, in which she talked about this and her inspiration for it and what she was intending to do in the novel as a kind of corrective to King Lear as she saw it. And her remarks troubled me a little bit. I didn't understand why she felt the need to go as extremely in the direction that she chose to go in. Just like Ahab is kind of bent on vengeance, right, in Moby Dick. I feel like Jane Smiley was a little bit kind of bent on vengeance as well in conceiving a corrective to King Lear. So, but it's still just an absolutely brilliant book. If you've never read it, you must. Whether or not you read King Lear with it, it's up to you. The book stands on its own. 1,000 Acres. Won the Pulitzer Prize. I think it won the National Book Critics Circle Award as well. Did I say lastly? I'm going to do one more pairing. Okay, I'm going to pair Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which you guys know I can't stand. Brilliant idea. Maybe the most brilliant idea in the history of literary fiction, but terribly written. But I'm going to pair it with Peter Carey's novel, My Life as a Fake. Okay, now this novel was inspired in large part by a true case, the Malley incident, right, which you can read about online. But it's also very much a kind of inspired reinvention of Frankenstein, in the sense that we have a kind of monstrous figure who has a creator. In his remarkable new novel, the 2-time Booker-winning author Peter Carey creates a creature as indelible as Frankenstein's. In Melbourne, in the late 1940s, a young conservative Australian poet named Christopher Chubb decides to teach his country a lesson about pretension and authenticity. Choosing as his target the most avant-garde of the literary magazines, he submits for publication the entire oeuvre of one Bob McCorkle, a working-class poet of raw power and sexual frankness, conveniently dead at 24 and entirely the product of Chubb's imagination. Not only does the magazine fall for the hoax, but the local authorities also sue its editor for publishing obscenity. At the trial, someone uncannily resembling the faked photograph of the invented McCorkle leaps to his feet. At this moment, a horrified Chubb is confronted by the malevolent being he has himself manufactured. This is a really fine novel. It's a much better novel than Frankenstein. And it's a novel that, again, too few people have read. When people think Peter Carey, they think of his Booker Prize-winning novels. They don't think of My Life as a Fake. I will see you soon. I don't have any more tags kind of lined up, but I do have a buddy read video that I'll be putting up later this week. And there'll be another 2-shelf tour and who knows what else. That was the Contemporary and Classics Pairs tag. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Big Al Books. And I will see everybody soon. Bye.